Nigel Twumasi with us, who is co-founder of mayamada, which is a company branch with brands that cover comics, youth engagement. Who's you're a software engineer. Past life. He was also appointed to the London Mayor's Cultural Advisory, Cultural Leadership Board, and also the Children's
Children's Media Conference, Young BAFTA Advisory.
Children's Media.
I'm co-founder of a brand called mayamada, and also on the Mayor's Cultural Leadership Board, Young BAFTA Advisory Committee, Children's Media Conference Advisory Committee, develop a lot of committees basically. Spend time in rooms talking to people, and then they go and do things and I do the work. But a lot of work around comics, manga in particular. If anyone's into anime, we do events around video games, and a lot of youth engagement with young people who would like to be in creative industries. So, in a nutshell, that's sort of what I do. We have a podcast, and we did an episode on Superman.
Right.
So I have a lot of thoughts, but I know people time.
So just real quick, what was your view of the film? Also, maybe in comparison to previous Superman films.
Oh, so in comparison to the previous Superman, definitely the best, because I think the past have been terrible. It's So it's a bit of background. So because we have this ongoing debate where I'm not the biggest Superman fan, because I find him narratively somewhat of a boring character because he's perfect, and narratively it's hard to put perfect characters who are like indestructible into like interesting scenarios. But what's interesting is a while ago, I think it was last year, we did a podcast episode where I know if anyone knows Forbidden Planet, comic book shop, so I know some of the staff there, and there's one in particular who he is a fan of Superman, so we have this ongoing debate. So he said he will prove to me that Superman's an interesting character. So we did a episode on a comic series called Superman for All Seasons, and it takes a look at Clark Kent and the important people.
That's kind of close to one of the graphic novels. So
it's a graphic novel. Yeah, so we did so we all read it, and it takes a look at like Clark Kent, the alien, the person, and that was very interesting. So that sort of turned my thinking somewhat around. But I felt this was a very decent film. It's a weird analogy, but I like it if is anyone into tennis here? Into tennis? Okay, so one. Yeah, so in tennis when they serve, and if you mess up the first serve, they do a second one, but the second one's always safer. This is that second serve for me. So all the previous films have tried to do something, and in my opinion, have mostly failed. I think this is James Gunn taking what is ultimately a safe approach, but it worked. Mm-hmm. So I think it's solid, but I expect more, particularly from James Gunn, because again, some background, James Gunn used to be a director for Marvel, so he directed Guardians of the Galaxy, which are, in my opinion, among the best Marvel films. Then got into some trouble, they went back for the third one, and then he switched over to DC. So he's now taken over the whole DCU, so DC Universe. So going forward, this is, I think this is the first one of the DCU. So Supergirl's next, and then comes. So he's basically taking over what Kevin Feige, the producer at Marvel, did for the MCU in their attempt to make a shared universe.
Well, we may have to see how that still works out, because
brothers, I
taken over. So
so there's whole. It's very interesting, the whole like company machinations affected. I think it will still happen just because what Marvel have done has been very valuable, and whoever's taken over Warner will still want that. Whether they'll do it is another question. But I think this film, so it's very solid. What I liked about it is I think the is it David Cornswell? I forgot the actor's name who plays Superman.
yes.
I think he does a good job of it. I think Mr. Terrific is terrific. Just personal favourite. And then some personal vindication for him, because he's actually, if anyone's seen some of the old X-Men film. So First Class. So he, and this is for me, but he was in X-Men First Class when he was a lot younger, and there was a scene which you remember where he died unnecessarily. Yeah, unnecessarily died, and it's just a personal hurt for me. So it's nice to see him come back in this film and have a real role and survive to the end. What I not necessarily didn't like, I don't think there's anything I didn't like, but there's interesting themes. So for me, the most interesting scene for me was the one of him and Lois when they were arguing about like his role in the sort of conflict there, because it spoke to some of the themes that are interesting about Superman. What do you do if you have someone who has unlimited power and you in theory can't control? And that's always an interesting one. If anyone's seen The Boys or Invincible series on Amazon Prime, you have characters in there who are all powerful. What happens when they go wrong? And that's an interesting thing with Superman, because he's good and that's part of his character. But what if he goes wrong? How do we stop him? So that makes like Lex Luthor an interesting character. But then I felt they didn't really go as far as they could have with the themes. So by the end, he never, and again, we talked like for a couple of hours on the podcast about this, but by the end, he never really had to make a difficult decision. So there was a point in the film where it's either you go to the rift or go and save the people. That could have been an interesting, but in the end, he had his cake and ate it too, because he got to send people over and then he gets to save the day as well. So yeah, like I said, and that's why I say it's safe. It's it works, but it's safe, and I'd like to see more from. But it is definitely better, because Batman vs Superman was actually hurts how bad that was, in Justice League was blur. So, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, in a nutshell.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to throw it out to you. Oh, please. Again, because of time, there's so much that you delivered that I would love to drop, but we just don't have the time. So I'm going to give my speaking time over to you all. So any questions, any statements? What did you think of the film? Did you like it? Did you prefer some of the other versions? The Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner version, or do you prefer the Bryan Singer version? Please. Sorry, can we have one of the young people? Are you good at projecting your voice?
When needed. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I've heard them, but yeah, you can really see them. Yeah, back and forth. Yeah, no, it's fine.
Hello.
Hi.
No,
Oh, no, it's good. It's good. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry. So considering superheroes that have I'd say the pull in order to convince the masses that they are good, I think Superman definitely has been that symbol of peace for years. Definitely pushed.
You mean like in the real world?
In the real world,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then you also touched upon, let's say, Homelander and Omni-Man, who I feel, considering humans on this planet, I wouldn't even, I'm slightly anti-hero, to be honest.
Okay.
But I almost feel like when humans are put in jeopardy, they do come together a lot closer when they have a common goal, a common enemy.
You like to think that. I don't know. I feel like evidence has shown otherwise. But yeah, you'd like to think that.
Yeah, no, weirdly enough, I feel like, and that's exactly what happened here, where people started to come together when Superman was a common enemy, until they realized that the person who was actually putting him as the enemy was really the main perpetrator. And I feel like that does happen a lot in a lot of movies and that usually have a protagonist and antagonist, but there's usually that disparity of a villain side being a bit misconstrued, because even when, let's say, what was his name, Lex Luthor was speaking, he was more speaking from an envious standpoint, him saying, you know, humans are, for sure, you know, we are weak in a sense. Obviously we're not, but in that instance, it made sense as to what he was explaining. It's just he was going about it the wrong way, as in he was trying to empower himself as opposed to empowering humans as a whole.
Yeah. So I mean, I say like the best villains are the ones where they have a point where you can see the point. So I say Thanos. In fact, actually, Thanos is a good example. If anyone's seen Black Panther, Killmonger, I might mention this last time, is a great example, because you understand what he means, and to a certain extent, he's right. He's right, especially the scene where he's introduced. So Lex Luthor, he has a point, but with villains, they tend to go too far beyond what is commonly accepted as good. And I think, yeah, Superman's like the ultimate like good. And I think what they've done well in that scene, and particularly in the scene with him and Lois Lane. He has the, where he loses it a bit, where he's like, I stopped people from dying. I did a good thing. Forget like governments, forget borders. I did a good thing, but everyone else has to live in the real world. And what are the ramifications? Because none of us can go and just like do the right thing when we have to like, deal with the confines. So, and that's an interesting debate. And then him, it was only a small bit in the film, but when they take him back to his parents, again, linking back to the 4 seasons, his parents are a big focus in that. So for me, it was good to see, even though it was a short bit, like his roots essentially, and what does make him a more interesting character is, despite the mission he's been given by his birth parents, his Earth parents are the ones that raised him and instilled him with the values that he then uses to wield the massive power. So with Omni-Man, and I mean, Homelander's like, yeah, Homelander's just like a complete corrupt version of that.
Homelander is the Trump, if Trump was Superman.
Yeah, basically.
If you haven't seen the series before, watch it.
And then Omni-Man's a bit like in the middle, I'd say. But then you were saying before about the themes to like today's world and Trump.
Yeah.
Which is a good point, because it is interesting. So you see Superman, who is essentially an illegal alien, or an alien at least, and the way he's treated, he's taken to a black site, which
we see,
unfortunately, you see like conflict between like larger nations and smaller nations being invaded. So I think, James Gunn, and if for anyone who's seen Guardians of the Galaxy or the Suicide Squad, because he directed that,
the second one,
which is the good one, because the first one was completely irredeemable. But yeah, the second one, Idris Elba, and then that's where Peacemaker. So and that was good. And James Gunn has this ability to be like, respect the source material, but be what's the word, like, but not too much where he doesn't not necessarily make fun, but make it fun.
Yeah, and he brings in a sense of irony with regarding elements of the source material. So
so I feel he's good at what he does. It's a shame that he won't be on anything Marvel going forward, I imagine. But I feel for what DC are trying to do, I have questions over whether they will be able to do it for multiple reasons. But one, because just as an audience, even Marvel can't do what Marvel did and have it work in the same way. So I wonder what they will do, if it will work. But if anyone's going to make it work, James Gunn will. But yeah, we'll see. I'm skeptical, but like I said, very decent.
All right,
very decent.
I'll try and, because I said I wasn't going to speak, but I'm just going to put the brother's point. 60 seconds. I see I can put this in 60 seconds and throw it out to you. But it's the geek and nerd in me is dying to come out. But look, I hear your point and what you said. But again, when we look at the duality of hero villain, and especially if we're looking at Superman and Lex Luthor, opposite sides of the same coin, just like Batman and the Joker. So Lex Luthor represents that supposedly worst side of humanity. And if you look at this Lex Luthor perhaps being a combination of Trump, Bezos, Elon Musk, and are you familiar with the Big Bang Theory? Right, remember Sheldon? An evil Sheldon. So combine all that together, then you've got this Lex Luthor. And
so you didn't like him? Or you didn't? Did you?
What, this Lex Luthor? No, I think this one is the best Lex Luthor since I've been portrayed in film. Just like this Lois Lane is the best Lois Lane since the Christopher Reeves Lois Lane. So no, I loved it.
The only thing I didn't like about it, and because it bugged me the first time I saw it, but the thing about him calling out the codes and the names for the moves, I don't know how anyone else felt. I get it that the point is he studied Superman so much that he understands every move, that he can catalog it. I get that, but like practically, it's just weird. Like Superman's supposed to be the strongest and the fastest,
Yeah.
but he's getting outmoved by someone far away. He's calling out moves to someone.
But if you, there's a comic book that this is also
So
based
that's what I wanted to
on.
say.
There's a comic book that this is also based on called Superman Birthright. I think it's one of the best graphic novels that retold and re-envisioned the story of Superman. And just as a quick side note, in that story of Superman and his journey from becoming Kal-El, Clark Kent, into Superman, he actually finds his purpose on the continent of Africa, because he's traveling the whole world and he settles in Africa, and there's a nation that's going to be overthrown, and he sides with a Nelson Mandela type character, and that's where he finds his purpose in saving humanity. And in that comic book, there's a brilliant line that Lex Luthor delivers to Superman, because they knew each other when they were young as teenagers in this comic book. And Lex Luthor says to Clark Kent, Superman, "Oh, but no, you're also very smart and intelligent." And Clark turns around and says, "No, I'm not. I just can read fast." And I can just retain information quickly. But the capacity to comprehend, Luthor is actually superior. So that's what the hint was regarding brain over brawn. And I think also James Gunn used it as a callback to Superman 3 and Superman 4 starring Christopher Reeves. In Superman 3 was the Richard Pryor Superman. If you remember, Richard Pryor, he's told to create kryptonite, and there's an element on the periodic table that it's unknown regarding kryptonite, and so he's smoking a cigarette and he's thinking, I'll just put tar in there. And that element makes Christopher Reeve split into two Supermen, a good and evil. And it's also a callback to Superman 4, because Lex Luthor in Superman 4 gets a strand of Superman's hair and he creates a clone, Nuclear Man.
So like I said, like James Gunn, just to clarify, my criticism of Superman didn't extend to Christopher Reeve. It's the recent.
I get you.
Okay, just to make sure. And so that's why that's the element why I trust James Gunn, because I feel he does respect the material. And puts it in. So I trust what I saw, even with the code thing. Even though I personally was a bit weird in film, I assume that is coming from comics, and James Gunn respect that.
And really, in Superman's biggest and most powerful superpower is his adopted humanity. Whereas Lex Luthor lacks humanity. So that is the mirror between the two. But look, let me throw it back to you. Any more statements, questions? No? Okay, what about any other kind of undertones? I know the brother mentioned about the current situation, but I don't know whether you're familiar with the creators of Superman, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel. What's Superman's Kryptonian's name? Kal-El. Right, it's actually a Hebrew name, a Hebrew word, Kal-El, which means the voice of God, the representation of God, the word of God. So there's, in the previous Superman films, there's always this representation, religious symbolism.
Thank you. You know, the whole aspect of Moses as a baby being raised, Jesus as a baby being taken and raised. So they always make sure those connotations also in the film. But again, to your point of even the parents and the brother's point at the back, what I picked up from it is that, especially when Luthor says, if you notice, he separates the word super, man. And the super is from his Kryptonian parents. The man is from Ma and Pa Kent. And when we look at what's being portrayed in the film, and even though it's the Kryptonian parents, which I love the twist that James Gunn done with the parents, because that's never been done before. He took again an element of Superman Birthright, because that's the same storyline that everyone thinks now, that because of Lex Luthor's plans that Superman is here to herald a whole Kryptonian invasion and take over the Earth and what have you. But in the comic books, it was actually false, the message. But James Gunn made it real. But I like the aspect of how he made the Kryptonians in that kind of colonizing mindset. You know, no, you're there to colonize the planet. You're better than them, which again is another political element that I don't know, people pick up on that from that. So I love the twist that he put in that, and it's his human parents that gave him then that humanity side.
Yeah, no, that's good. Again, similar to, if anyone hasn't seen Invincible, I advise that. It's very good. It's very gory, just fire warning, but it's very good. And Omni-Man is similar. Actually, I'm not even going to say too much about that. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
It's a very adult cartoon. It's a cartoon. Very adult. It's not made for children.
No, but it is very good. I agree with that. So I think this gives me hope. With my little layer of skepticism.
And that's the key word.
Yeah, there you go.
Because
maybe
that's what Superman, every incarnation of Superman is supposed to represent
about that.
Hope.
Yeah, hope. Yeah.
It's supposed to represent hope.
Yeah. So I did like what I saw, and like I mentioned, we did a whole podcast episode about it. So we sort of talked back and forth about some of the bits, and it's positive.
Nice. So. Any closing? No, keep it yours. Any closing remarks regarding the film, or even what you think? Because I saw the trailer to Supergirl. The trailer was released earlier this week, in fact. So, where do you think the story may go? Because apparently James Gunn wanted to do a sequel to Superman, because I know originally it was called Superman Legacy, but
So I haven't watched the Supergirl trailer just because I'm trying to do this thing where I don't. If I know I'm going to watch something, and we've already put it on our podcast schedule, so if I know I'm going to watch it, I'll try if I can just watch the thing and rather, because sometimes trailers they say too much and they. So I try.
Especially nowadays.
So I can't say I've definitely not watched it, because I'll watch something and I'll catch it, but I've tried not to. But what I have heard is James Gunn taking the approach of not making Supergirl perfect, and you saw that in the bit that she was in. I think that's interesting. I think from a general superhero perspective, so like Marvel, DC, and anything in between, what we saw there. If anyone's seen The Batman. Which is actually great, actually probably way better than I thought it was going to be. But they did a similar thing there where they skipped the origin story. So we didn't see a Superman origin story, because I feel we've all seen enough over the past 10 years. We've seen enough of origin stories. So what's interesting for Supergirl, I presume James Gunn will do, is like, we don't need to see her origin, just this is who she is. So that's interesting for one. And then taking the superheroes don't have to be perfect. So I think what people are learning definitely from the boys, because I enjoyed the latest season. I think people had some issues, but I enjoyed it. What we saw with the boys is like imperfect to the point of wholly corrupt superheroes, and Invincible as well. And I think for today as well, because you mentioned the creators, and we have to remember, like the superheroes, the characters are products of their time. So you had Captain America, he's fighting Hitler, and so it's a product of his time. So I think what we're hopefully seeing from the films is less so trying to replicate one for one what's been in the comics that were done 60 years ago, and how can you adapt them for our time without being too preachy, for lack of a better word. I think that's some of the criticism that the because it's doing more, but the recent episode series of The Boys, because it's very, again, I liked it, but it's very on the nose. It's very, they're not hiding what they're trying to say and who they're trying to say about, which, like, narratively speaking, you shouldn't necessarily always do. It shouldn't be like a preachy kind of thing, but it's very irreverent and funny. But yeah, so I hope, this is why I trust James Gunn to do things where, he's making stories that are of our time and speaking to where we are and adapting where they need to be adapted, without being like too preachy. So, but then I think because we talked about Thunderbolts and Nasir before, my overarching concern, and you mentioned like Warner Brothers and the situation with them being taken over by Netflix, is the kind of the problem with success, at least, and not to go too deep into like capitalism and stuff. But the problem with success is sometimes the companies learn the wrong lessons. So the thing with with Marvel and the Avengers, what was interesting about when they are in the films and they teamed up is we had seen Iron Man 1, 2, we had seen Captain America 1, 2, we had seen Thor, we had seen whoever it was. So we had prior, not just knowledge, but emotional attachment to these characters. So when they're in Avengers 1, Avengers 2 was okay. And then Infinity War, you're invested in it. And what DC learned at the time is just put superheroes in the same film and it will work itself out, which is not the lesson.
Cookie cut.
Yeah.
Before you could work with it, yeah.
And then you get to Endgame, which is fantastic. And I'm not saying it's the best film ever, but I think in terms of a cinema experience and that kind of thing, it's fantastic.
100%.
But unfortunately, what Marvel seemed to learn is put lots of characters in the same film. So my worry is if anyone's seen the reveal trailer for the next sort of team up. I've got a friend, and I remember he shared it. He said, "Oh, this is going to be good. Look at who's in it." I'm worried. If the thing you're selling it,
so Avengers Doomsday.
Doomsday, yeah. If you're, I'm not saying it will be bad. I'm just saying I'm worried because if your main selling point is look at all the actors we've got in, I don't care. Why do I care now? Tell me where they've been. I know Fantastic Four was decent as well. So that's my kind of, the hope is we learn to use these characters and adapt them for the times that they are. And we learn from the decade plus everything, but the worry is
I suppose it's the same analogy of if you've got a child that's got a whole toy set and they just get bored of having so many toys in front of them. And you've got this one child just focused on this one toy and they're just playing for hours with this one toy. So so maybe Marvel needs to go back to that.
No, DC Marvel, they have all the toys. They've shown to a certain extent it works, like Infinity War and Endgame are some of the biggest grossing films of all time. And they're trying to replicate that, but my hope is that they learn the lessons that the reason why those worked is because we were invested in the stories of these individual characters into credible stories. And then again, back to James Gunn, hoping he's picked up on that lesson.
Well, because they actually released the films in the model of comic books. So remember back in the day when you would have 12 issues over a year, and then it would come out as an annual at the end of the year. That's how the films.
And that's part of the problem because there are things you can do in comics that a film audience won't tolerate. Yeah. So as a just glaring example, because we spoke about it recently, has anyone seen Captain America with the recent one? So I might upset people, but I think that's a disappointingly terrible film. And one of the things that really genuinely annoyed me is it made callbacks, not just Easter eggs, but core narrative callbacks to the first Hulk, the Incredible Hulk with Ed Norton. That's 17 years ago. I'm not going to remember, let alone care about plot points from 17 years ago. In comics, you can do that. I don't think you can do that in films. There needs to be a different way to do that. Because I'm saying because I just literally practically I don't remember 17 years ago, and I don't care. But you're relying on me to get these points, and you can't do that. So at some point, it's going to have to be some kind of reset. That's my closing. Some hope mixed with some skepticism.
Wow, man. Well, that was a closing. All right. Thank you. Please keep it going. Please thank our volunteers from University College of London. Please thank Veronica, New Black Film Collective. Please thank Nigel, our brilliant speaker, guest. And most importantly, please thank yourselves for coming out tonight and being so patient with the villainous equipment. So thank you.
Merry Christmas!